Hi, I'm Jane, and together with Jodes, we are two proud feminists passionate about female empowerment. This podcast is our take on the real conversations, real issues, and real challenges we must stay focused on if we're going to inspire the next generation of female leaders, managers, and entrepreneurs to pick up the baton and continue the journey to equality. But be warned, there will be rants and the odd profanity, but mainly just lots of curious conversations, uplifting stories, great guests, and food for thought on the path we still have to travel. It is clear that our young girls need us to harness our gumption and to use our voices now to make the changes we all know need to happen. It's time to be a pioneer, not a passenger. To paraphrase the famous words of a female game changer, Hollywood's iconic Bette Davis, fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride. So, good day to you all. Welcome to Series 1, Episode 5 of Jane and Jodes on One. Today, we are talking about my zone of genius. I love that phrase, which is modern day Superwoman, and why we need to kick her to the curb. So this is a model of behavior that I have worked with thousands of women to help them dismantle and get rid of, because it's very destructive. So let me explain what it is. Strong woman syndrome, Superwoman, the modern day response to us being told that we could have it all. And the way we've interpreted that, ladies, is to do it all. So what we've said to ourselves is, well, we've been told we can have it all, which basically means we still have to do everything we were doing before, i.e. being the primary carers for children and aging parents, doing all the household chores, writing all the bills for the, writing all the checks for the bills, sorting out the holidays, doing all of that. But now you have a job as well.
Yours.
Hey, fantastic. So we've taken that on and we are literally killing ourselves trying to make all of this work. So here we are. We have these really high expectations of ourselves. So we've got to be the best boss, the best mum, the best team player, the best sister, the best neighbor, the best mum at the school gates, the best wife, the best domestic goddess, and so it goes on. So we have these really high expectations of ourselves. And because of that, we have really low expectations of everybody else, because let's be honest, who wants to live up to our standards? Not many people. So we talk about not being able to find the right staff. We talk about, well, you know what, I might as well just do it myself, because, you know, I can do it quicker, faster, and more efficiently than anybody else. And this turns us into scary, all-consuming control freaks. Know any, Jodes?
Yeah, if I just have a little gaze in the mirror, I might spot one.
Okay.
A lesser spotted control freak right in front of my own eyes.
You could very well have. You could very well have. So because of that, we take on everything, and then we start talking about how we're juggling and how we've got no work-life balance. If you sit in any cafe in anywhere and listen to women's conversations, at some point it will get to this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm juggling all these different plates. I'm doing everything. You know, I've got no work-life balance, which I think is kind of like, I don't know anybody that's got that. If anybody else, please call in, because I don't even know what that looks like. And so because we're doing all of that, we don't allow anybody else to do anything. We eventually make a mistake. We trip up, we drop a plate. And when we do that, we tend to blame everybody else, because it can't possibly be our fault, can it? Because we're doing everything. We're doing everything. So we've gone from this strong woman to victim in the same model of behavior, possibly in the same conversation, most definitely several times a day. And so it's a very confusing model. People don't quite know whether to step forward and help us, whether we'll bite their head off. Do we need help? Do we want help? Should we just step back, all in control? And so we sabotage our right to our authenticity, because we're trying to be this little Miss Perfect all the time. And we also sabotage our right to an imperfect life, because, you know, who wants to be perfect? It's boring. And it's also an illusion. It doesn't exist. So this is a very destructive model of behavior. But we also see it showing up in our young girls now.
Yeah.
We're teaching them how to do it. So they want to be perfect and they're doing exactly the same stuff. So it translates into all areas of life. Our superwoman becomes super wife becomes super mum becomes super boss. And then we've got lots of super singles who are permanently single, and that's a whole different series.
Yeah.
And so it's very destructive. And we really need to learn to let go of it, because it is kind of sabotaging us. So let's kind of look at some of the solutions. And I'm going to ask you, Jodes, because we're both probably on this spectrum. So if this spectrum of superwoman, and if we're all honest, we're all on it at some point, okay? And some of us might be more self-aware of it than others. Some of us might have got off it at some point, come back on it. Some of us might be on it and quite high. Some of us might be just doing a bit of it. But if this spectrum is 1 to 10, and 10 is full on superwoman, full on doing all the things I've just described, and 1 or 2 is like a little bit of, I'm doing a little bit of that, where would you say you were?
There's definitely times where I've been off the scale, probably an 11 or a 12. But you know what? Everything you've just described, sitting there nodding, going, yeah, tick, 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 tick. That's the perfect description of me.
Yeah.
Ironically, the perfectly imperfect description of me.
Of you.
But yeah, I'd be about an 8 now.
Okay.
I'd be about an 8, and I say an 8, even though I've been working on it for quite some time, actually.
Because you see, we see it as a strength, don't we? This model, we see it as strong. We see it as like, well, I'm a strong woman. I can do all of these things. I can deliver that, and that at the same time. I can multitask, multi-think, multi-process. I'm absolutely on it. And the days when we're on it is the days when we can say, you want to see how much work I've done today? You want to see how many of these I've done? And at the same time, I didn't forget to pick the kids up.
Yeah, you know what? Those days, for me, it's like a drug.
Yeah.
Because it gives you that much of a buzz. I'm like, check me out. I am winning at life, nailing it. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
I don't
invincible.
I don't even feel like I need anybody else to blow my own trumpet for me. I'm like, I am seriously the bee's knees today.
Yeah.
But it's almost addictive, that feeling.
Yeah. But it's also not sustainable, is it? So then the following day you might have I don't feel like I've achieved anything today. And then you beat yourself up for that as well. So we do see this superwoman as a strength. We definitely see it as a strength, which means that the opposite of that we see being who we really are, is a weakness. That we see our real, authentic self as a weakness. And I would mention at this point the V word. Okay, so make sure we get the right V word, because you and I know many V words, but I'm talking about vulnerability. Yeah, I'm talking about vulnerability, and women that play this superwoman game don't want to show their vulnerability, because why?
Well, because that makes me look inferior and weak.
Yeah, and that makes me look weak, so I don't want to look weak. So I have to cover that in this superwoman model. I have to look like it's all going on all the time, so nobody can sort of see my vulnerability. But that isn't real, and that is not a great model to teach our kids.
No, and actually, those kind of, if I am to allow that vulnerability to come, and for me not to be on it like a car bonnet and all of those things, the emotion that triggers in me almost innately, if I just leave my body to its own devices, it's shame that I experience then, and that's a very uncomfortable emotion for me, and I guess for many other I'm just going to say people, never mind women. None of us like to sit in shame. And that's something I'm trying to practice a little bit more on this journey that we're talking about today, in my quest to relinquish my superwoman badge, cape, whatever you want to call it, is to learn to, even initially, just to let that emotion flow and sit with it a bit. My temptation is to fight it, because someone will say to me, well, you shouldn't feel like that. There's no need for you to feel like that. Well, that might be all well and good, but I'm feeling it. So now I'm going to give myself a bashing for feeling something that you saying I shouldn't be feeling.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious circle.
Yeah. Yeah. So for you, it's shame. For somebody else, it might be insecurity. For
Yeah.
somebody else, it might be loneliness.
Mhm.
For somebody else, it might be an abject fear of failing
Yeah.
and what that means.
Mhm.
So, you know, we all were covering that emotion with this activity. If I keep just doing, I keep doing, then I'm never going to be.
And actually, when I try and hide my vulnerability and swallow the shame, I act like a bit of a knobhead, if I'm honest.
Mm,
I start behaving
mm,
in a silly way, where my husband will be like, "What are you saying that for?" I'll say really provocative things, like
mm,
childish things,
mm, mm,
that immediately afterwards I'm like, "What? Why have you just said that?"
mm,
But in the
mm.
heat of the moment, it's almost like a defense
Yeah.
mechanism that's
Yeah.
like,
Gets you right back to the
"Yeah,
Superwoman,
yeah,
because then it makes you feel more comfortable. Because we all want to stay where we're comfortable and what's familiar to us. It doesn't
mhm,
mean it's the right place.
no,
It just means we know how it works,
yeah,
don't we?
yeah."
So what we're doing is we're creating that dissonance to get back to that Superwoman and then go,
Gives me
okay,
safe space.
order
I
restored,
know what
order restored.
I know what I'm doing here.
Yeah, yeah. So you're kind of sometimes over at 10 or 11. I mean, obviously I've been working in this space for a long, long time, but I still have days where I might hit 6.
Yeah,
You know, where there's just too much going on and I try and do it all rather than go, whoa, 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 can't do it all. Can't do it all. So I can still have days when I get to a 6, but I think I've got it pretty nailed most days, but
yeah,
I'm human.
yeah,
So this vulnerability, it stops us being who we are, but it also stops us doing a lot of things that we should do because Superwoman is a safe place. It's a hard place, but it's safe. So we don't step out of that. We don't embrace risk. We don't do new things because then we might actually fail. And failure for Superwoman is huge. It's huge. It takes you right back to that weakness and that vulnerability.
yeah.
So we don't want to fail at anything. So we either make sure that we don't fail by working like 150 miles an hour, 100 times more than anybody else to make sure we don't fail, or we don't do the thing in the
We
first
avoid
place.
it.
We avoid it. Yeah. So we have a very unhealthy relationship to failure and to risk. And we see that in the way women don't put themselves up for promotion, in the way women don't go out and get investment for businesses that they're running.
Yeah,
That's all tied in to that.
yeah. Even with that, in terms of investment,
Yeah.
we're both in a corporate employed role. Seen that loads of times
Mm,
where, we all, I think most of us are familiar with the statistic about, women won't apply for a job
mm,
unless they can do all the things in the job advert,
yeah.
whereas men will be like, "Oh, I can do a fair few of
Yeah.
them,
Blag the
so I'll have
rest.
a stab at
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And if I don't get it,
Yeah.
I don't get it." But for women, it's like, well, if there's a chance that I might not, well, I'll tell you what, I might hold back.
Mm,
But again, there's been many times since I've run my own businesses where I've sat there and thought I could probably do with a bit of investment, but then thought, I'm not going to pitch for that
mm,
because
mm,
what if I don't get it? What if they
mm,
say no to me? It's almost like a big, massive rejection
mm,
fear.
mm, mm. Yeah. Okay. So we recognize where we are on the spectrum. We know it's not always working for us.
No.
Yeah, which not always works. Very, very rarely works for us. Do you see your behaviour, this Superwoman behaviour, reflected in your girls as you've got 3 teenage daughters,
Yeah,
Jodes? Do you see it?
I do. I do. And that's probably been the pinnacle moment that's finally,
Mm,
after all these years, made me do something about it. I particularly see it in one of my daughters in terms of actually behaving like the Superwoman. She gets very stressed if things aren't perfect,
mm,
if things aren't done a particular way. So she kind of, that's how it
my
manifests
first.
itself in
Yeah.
her. Whereas actually the other two, they'll do that whole avoiding.
Mm,
If there is any possibility that they might not be very good at something,
yeah.
if it's the first time they're about to try something, then actually they'll be like, "Well, I'm not doing it because what if I can't do it?"
Mm, mm,
Well, what if
mm,
you can?
yeah.
Yeah, but what if I can't? So I
Yeah.
tell you what, if there's a chance
If
that
I
I
can't, I
can't,
won't.
I'm just going to not
Yeah.
even go there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
two different, completely
Hmm.
different versions of
Yes.
that. But with on reflection, with
Mm,
hindsight, probably all born out of the
mhm,
same.
mhm. So thinking about this Superwoman model, are you aware? how or if it's affected any of your close relationships.
Yeah, actually. But it's only become apparent since I've consciously chosen to try and put it down a little bit. I think this year, 2023 for me, I felt quite burnt out at the back end of last year. So I decided this was the year for me just to slow down a little bit, be a bit more grounded, be a bit more present. Because quite often, whether it's with my husband or with the children, they always used to say, "You're so angry, Mum." Whether it was just a look on my face or the tone of my voice when I said something to them or replied to a question, like, "Why are you angry all the time?" And I would always respond with, "I'm not. What's your problem?" Ironically. And then only afterwards would I reflect on that. Yet we've literally just come back from a trip to Finland. So I was running a women's retreat, but at the end of that retreat, the family flew out and we had a bit of a half-term break there. And, Finland's just one of those places. Obviously, we were 1.5 meters deep in snow. You can hear a pin drop there. And so I really wanted to use that as an opportunity to practice, being more of my authentic self, taking off the Superwoman badge. And, when my husband flew out, he kept saying this to me. He was like, "Are you all right?" And I'm like,
"What have you done with Jodes?"
Yeah, fine. Why? Like, you're being a bit different. You're a bit quiet. And I was like, "I'm just chilling. I'm just relaxing and going with the flow and taking everything in and letting stuff happen as it happens, letting things unravel as they do." But I also saw a difference in the kids. They didn't say anything directly to me, but ordinarily, actually, after we'd had the women doing some of the snow activities, I started to worry. I was thinking, when my kids get here, they're going to look at this stuff and just be like, "Oh, I can't do that. I'm not even having a go at that because I won't be able to do it." And actually, I was so proud of them. They just got stuck in. It wasn't even a question about whether they were doing it or not. And they were brilliant at everything. So they showed up with a bit of a different mindset. But I truly do believe a lot of that was born out of the fact that I stepped back.
Yeah.
And relaxed a little bit and just let them be their authentic selves as well. And I've even said to myself, you know what, if they decide that they don't want to have a go of it, well, they don't have to have a go of it. Whereas before I'd be like, "No, come on, you need to have a go of this."
And you'd be fixing it all for them.
Yeah. Try this, do that. You've got your foot on the pedal wrong. You've got your skis on back to front. Take that one off.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even draw breath.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like that this time.
And they
that felt
stepped
good
up.
for me.
Yeah.
The kids stepped up.
Yeah.
My husband had a better time. We enjoyed each other's company. I mean, we enjoy each other's company anyway, but even more. So
fantastic.
The value is not as obvious as you may expect it to be till you give it a go.
Yeah. And it happens virtually immediately. Cool. So the other thing that's interesting to women that are carrying this is they're not very good at accepting help.
Yeah.
Okay. They're not very good at giving help and they're not very good at accepting help. They're not very good at giving help because they've got too much on. They're already going under. It's like, I can't be of anybody else. Yeah. But they're even worse at accepting help because again, they see that accepting help as a weakness. Yeah. I'm not doing the job right. So people don't quite know how to help them. They don't know whether to ask them, "Can I do that for you, Jodes? Can I take any of that off you? Or is just something that I can do?" Because they don't know they're going to get their head bit off. Yeah. Or like, "What do you mean? Well, why would you? What does it look like? I don't know what I'm doing. Yeah. Does it look like? Oh, well, that's charming.
I'm more than capable. Thank you very much. That's one of my lines."
Yeah. Or they might not say that to you, but then they might go to somebody else and go, "Do you know what Jane said to me the other day? I don't know who she thinks she is, but she suggested that I might not be up for the job and that I should be taking this. So if we don't do it direct with each other, then we'll go and do it somewhere else. Yeah. So we're not very good at accepting help. So
there have been times though, now you say that, there have been times, if I reflect back on my career, where there was one instance, I can see this, I can replay it in my mind as clear as day. where I was in a one-to-one with my own line manager and their line manager. And I was in quite a senior job at the time, where it was said to me, well, you know what, if you need help, then I'm a bit worried about whether you can actually do this or not. You know, is this really for you?
Yeah. And then that defines the way you ask for help or not ever again, doesn't it?
Well, what was the lesson there for me?
Well, don't ask.
Keep your mouth shut.
Yeah.
Don't let on to anybody if you don't quite know what you're doing, and keep your trap shut.
Yeah. And isn't that a male thing?
Yeah.
Mainly a male thing. So, you know, again, when we've got these women that are in corporate positions, Superwoman is quite male. She's quite male, the way she manages things. And clearly that's easier to do if you're in a corporate environment that's male dominated.
Yeah.
It's easier to be that Superwoman because it covers up your emotions. It covers up your fear of failure. It covers up your vulnerability. So all the things that women do quite naturally, it covers them. It says, oh, you can't do that here.
Yeah.
That's not how it works here. And so it helps you become one of the boys better. It helps you fit in that environment. Because the minute you start showing your vulnerability or your emotions and you cry, it's like, whoa, my God, whoa, we're crying for, love. What are you crying for?
Oh, it's all a bit too much
for you,
dear
me. You're not coping very well here, are you? So it's easier to use this model of behaviour to mask that.
Yeah.
But that's who we are. That's what our authenticity is. And you know, we talk about bring your authentic self to work, be an authentic leader. We have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
Because if we're being authentic, we wouldn't have Superwoman anywhere near us.
Yeah.
You know, and we would embrace our vulnerability, because vulnerability is power. And we would embrace the fact that we're emotional creatures.
Yeah.
You know, we would be perfectly happy with that. I mean, I'm happy with that. I'm an emotional creature. Some days I am incredibly emotional. Deal with it. It's who I am.
Yeah, for many years I really wasn't. You know, you could quite easily think I was a very cold-hearted person. Only more recently, when you and I really discussed this idea of not being in flow.
Yeah.
My life was just starting to feel harder and harder. And I think as I was getting older, it was easy in my 20s. You know, I had all this abundance of energy and ambition. Boom. That isn't funny when that happens, but energy and ambition that saw me through. You know, I've turned 40. I'm 44 in a couple of weeks, but the last 4 years has gradually, it feels like it's ground to a halt. And then, you know, where I thought, I want more of my feminine energy to come back into my life now. Well, it'll probably be for the first time ever. And it feels a bit weird, you know, and it'd be quite easy for me to go, oh, I'm not sure I like the feeling of this. Let me just go back to what I know because I'm safe there. But that would then be a self-sabotaging behaviour for me to do that.
Yeah.
So learning consciously to...
So you have to be brave. You have to be brave, don't you? You have to be brave. You have to be bold. You have to feel it. You have to let go of it. But only if you want to. If you're quite happy being Superwoman and you can manage it and you feel that that's the place you need to be and you're happy to sabotage your authenticity, who am I to say otherwise? But, you know, if you recognise you in some of the things we've talked about today and you know, you look in a mirror and you think, you know, I don't like that bit, or I want to be more, you know, emotionally in tune with who I am.
Or you're tired and you're exhausted.
Or you're exhausted by playing the game all the time, and you see it being reflected in your daughters, and you want to do it for them, even if you're not going to do it for you. Then, you know, be proud to be an emotional creature. Be kinder to yourself. Embrace that V word. Embrace that vulnerability. You'd be amazed what happens when you do. You'd be amazed what happens. Celebrate your flaws. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with saying, oh yeah, what am I like when I do that? You know, celebrate your flaws and live a real life, because that's what we're here to do. We're not here to live a model. We're not here to live some kind of identity that's not real. We're here to be who we're supposed to be. Yeah, so let it go. And, you know, read my book on this subject. It will be very enlightening. It'll be in the show notes. And till next time. You have been listening to Jane and Jodes on One. Until next time, remember, sisterhood matters. Together, we are bold, brave, fierce, and unstoppable.